downtown.
These are my predictions for UFC 300. The first fight on the card, we have Deiveson Figueiredo versus Cody Garbrandt. And right now, Deiveson Figueiredo is a pretty big favorite going into this fight. And to be honest with you guys, I completely understand why. Because Figueiredo is coming off a pretty impressive win over Rob Font. A fight where I actually picked against him because I thought Rob Font was going to be able to outbox him. I didn't think Deiveson Figueiredo was going to have that much success with the grappling. I didn't even think he was going to shoot takedowns. He actually shot takedowns. His power translated to 135. He still has a lot of power. I know it's Rob Font who tends to get hurt in every fight, but I think that if Deiveson Figueiredo lands that right hand, those body shots on Cody Garbrandt, it's going to be over. And Cody Garbrandt has one weakness, one major weakness, which is his chin, his durability. He's been finished in a lot of fights. He got finished by TJ Dillashaw. He got finished by Pedro Munoz. And even though he has 2 wins right now, one over Trevin Jones, a fight where nothing really happened. It was a very lackluster fight. I believe Cody Garbrandt landed like 25 significant strikes over 3 rounds, which is pretty pathetic. So nothing really happened in that fight against Trevin Jones. He went to his grappling. In that fight against Brian Kelleher, yeah, he was able to get the TKO, but it's like over who? Like, who is Cody Garbrandt beating these days? Brian Kelleher, Trevin Jones? And you want me to pick him against Deiveson Figueiredo? I can't really pick him against Deiveson Figueiredo. I know Cody Garbrandt also has power. He has slick boxing. But these days, he's less likely to want to exchange in the pocket and actually go to war, which I feel like this fight could be a little bit boring just because both of these guys have very low output. I mean, Deiveson Figueiredo has low output. He's more of a sniper. He's more of a one-shot. He doesn't really throw in combinations. He's very patient. Cody Garbrandt these days is also very patient. So I could see the first round kind of being a little bit lackluster. The way I see this fight is the moment that Deiveson Figueiredo lands something big, I think it's basically over. So I'm going to go with Deiveson Figueiredo by TKO/KO, either in the first or second round. I think the first round might be a little bit slow. And then maybe the second or third round, I could see Deiveson Figueiredo winning by KO. I don't see Cody Garbrandt having success with takedowns. If anything, maybe Figueiredo actually tries to shoot for takedowns. But why would he shoot for takedowns if he knows that Cody Garbrandt has a bad chin and that he has all the power? So I feel like this is just a terrible fight for Cody Garbrandt. And honestly, this almost feels like a step backwards for Deiveson Figueiredo because he's coming off a win over Rob Font, and then now you're fighting Cody Garbrandt, who's been facing Can. So it's kind of a weird match. I understand that they're 2 recognizable names, but to be honest, this fight shouldn't have even happened in the first place. And maybe I'm proven wrong. If Cody Garbrandt pulls the upset, maybe I'll look like an absolute fool, but I think Deiveson Figueiredo is going to be able to pull the knockout. Now, moving on to Bobby Green versus Jim Miller. Bobby Green, obviously a slick boxer, very rangy striker, has very fast hands, very precise, very accurate. Jim Miller, older fighter. Both of these guys are 2 veterans of the sport. Jim Miller's coming off that submission win over Gabriel Benitez in the 3rd round. And Bobby Green is a favorite going into this fight. And I don't understand why. Look, I know Bobby Green has slick boxing, fast hands. He is a better striker than Jim Miller. But Jim Miller is at a better point in his career. I think he's looked better than he's ever looked. I mean, he has pretty good striking. He has power. He has a nasty ground game. He's pretty healthy. I know he's been facing cans, but he's been looking good, while Bobby Green got absolutely murdered a couple times against Jalen Turner at UFC Austin. And there's rumors that Bobby Green's soul is still stuck at UFC Austin, man. This guy got absolutely killed, like one of the worst stoppages in UFC history. And the fact that he's a favorite against Jim Miller, I think is a little bit crazy. And even before Bobby Green got absolutely murdered by Jalen Turner, I mean, I know he fraud checked Grant Dawson. He got that knockout in 30 seconds, which I don't really see him knocking out Jim Miller. And then prior to that, he had that fight against Tony Ferguson, where I thought he didn't look that great on the feet, man. Actually, Tony Ferguson actually hurt him in that first round. And even though, obviously he was winning most of the striking exchanges with Tony Ferguson, like, it was a terrible version of Tony Ferguson. Probably that version of Tony Ferguson is way worse than Jim Miller. So even that fight against Jared Gordon before the headbutt, I didn't think Bobby Green looked all that great. So in my opinion, I feel like Bobby Green has kind of already been on a decline. And then now he's coming off a knockout loss over Jalen Turner 4 months prior. So I'm going to go with the underdog. I'm going with Jim Miller. I think he has the power to knock out Bobby Green. I think he could also take this fight to the ground. I just think, you know, the fact that Bobby Green is coming off such a brutal knockout loss and the fact that he keeps his hands so low, man, I'm going with the underdog. I'm going with Jim Miller. Now, moving on to Jessica Andrade versus Marina Rodriguez. I'm going to go with Marina Rodriguez, guys. The reason I'm going with Marina Rodriguez is I just feel like Jessica Andrade has kind of just checked out of her career. Look, I know she's coming off a win over Mackenzie Dern, but prior to that, she was like on a 3-fight losing streak. She had lost to Erin Blanchfield. She had lost to Zhang Jianan, where she got knocked out in the first round. She got submitted by Tatiana Suarez. So I feel like she's kind of been checked out of the game. I feel like she's not as motivated as she used to be. I know that she's young. She has a lot of power, but I mean, she's already been in a lot of big fights. And even though I think Marina Rodriguez isn't all that, I think she's kind of mid. You know, she goes to a lot of split decisions. She got finished by Amanda Lemos. Even Michelle Watterson had success with the takedowns. Marina Rodriguez is still a pretty decent striker, and her major hole is her grappling. And I don't see Jessica Andrade shooting for takedowns. She's going to try to knock her out. And lately, she also has pretty slow output. So Marina Rodriguez, she's a longer fighter. She's a more rangy fighter. And even though I don't think she has a lot of power, she is pretty dangerous in the clinch. I mean, she throws pretty nasty elbows, pretty nasty knees. So I'm going to go with Marina Rodriguez by a decision. It's not a very confident pick just because, like, I don't think Marina Rodriguez is all that, especially like if you look at the competition she's been facing. Jessica Andrade, obviously she's been facing the better competition, but she's been looking absolutely terrible. I know she was able to knock out Mackenzie Dern, but it's Mackenzie Dern on the feet, so that doesn't really say much. So moving on to the next fight, we got Jalen Turner versus Renato Moicano. This is a terrible fight for Moicano in my opinion. I think Jalen Turner is just a terrible stylistic matchup. Jalen Turner has a touch of death. This guy has crazy power. He touches you, you're basically going out. We just saw what he did to Bobby Green. And in every fight, even the fights he loses, he lands pretty nasty shots. I mean, I know he lost that fight against Dan Hooker, but he landed a pretty nasty head kick. Like, if it was any other fighter, they would have gotten knocked out by that head kick. And honestly, I don't understand how Dan Hooker survived that, because Dan Hooker has been knocked out by Arnold Allen. He's been knocked out by Michael Chandler, but somehow he was durable enough. I don't know if it was the blonde hair. I don't know why Dan Hooker was so durable against Jalen Turner, but he was. But most fighters will not, you know, like take that kind of damage, the kind of damage that Dan Hooker took. And then prior to that, you know, he was coming off a loss against Mateusz Gamrot, but obviously Mateusz Gamrot is just a bad stylistic matchup just because of the takedowns. And I think that even though Renato Moicano could implement a similar game plan, I don't think he has the grappling ability. He's not as technical with his takedowns as Gamrot is. You know, obviously Renato Moicano has a pretty good BJJ game. He has pretty good Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But I just think we've seen Moicano get knocked out in a lot of his fights. I mean, he got knocked out against Rafa Fiziev, against Jose Aldo. And I just feel like this is the kind of matchup that Moicano always loses in. I just feel like Jalen Turner is just a little bit too powerful, a little bit too slick. He's precise. He's patient. You know, his takedown defense is actually pretty good. And I see Moicano having a hard time closing the distance. I see him getting knocked out as he closes the distance. So I'm going to go with Jalen Turner by a knockout. Now, moving on to Sodiq Yusuff versus Diego Lopes. Very close fight, man. I feel like a lot of people are sleeping on Sodiq Yusuff. And to be totally honest with you guys, I'm picking Sodiq Yusuff to win this fight. Look, I initially was picking Diego Lopes, but I went back to watch some of Sodiq Yusuff's fight, and the guy is pretty well-rounded. You know, he has power in the first round. He throws pretty good left and right hooks. He's very composed. He's a way better striker than Diego Lopes. Yes, I know Diego Lopes probably has more power, but Sodiq Yusuff also has power. And yes, Diego Lopes has a pretty good BJJ game, but he doesn't have any takedowns. So how is he going to take Sodiq Yusuff to the ground? And the only way that, you know, Diego Lopes is going to be able to snatch his submission is if Sodiq Yusuff actually shoots for a takedown, which I don't see happening here. I think this fight is going to take place on the feet. And if you ask me, like, who's the better striker, I think Sodiq Yusuff is the better striker. Obviously, Diego Lopes could make something happen because he has this pressure style. He has this kill or be killed kind of mindset. He does have knockout power. But I just think Sodiq Yusuff is going to be too crafty. I think his striking is a lot better. He has a way better striking defense. He has pretty good left and right hooks. And I think that he's going to be able to beat Diego Lopez by a decision, maybe a late TKO. And yeah, I'm going to go with Sodiq Yusuff. I know he's a pretty good underdog right now, but I'm going to go with him. Look, I'm a big fan of Diego Lopez, but when I went back to rewatch tape, I like Sodiq Yusuff's chances, man. I know he's coming off that loss against Edson Barboza, but I mean, it's Edson Barboza. And even in that first round, he had Barboza on skates, man. He really hurt Edson Barboza. And Diego Lopez, he's not very good defensively. So I'm going to go with Sodiq Yusuff to win this fight. Now, moving on to the next fight, we got Holly Holm versus Kayla Harrison. I'm going to go with Kayla Harrison, but I'm not as confident as some people are. Look, Holly Holm, I know she's a lot older in her career. She's a striker. Obviously, she's going to look to not get taken down by Kayla Harrison, but this is the first time that Kayla Harrison fights at 135 pounds. This is a big girl here, and obviously she's going to look to take Holly Holm down to the mat, but she's a terrible striker, man. I had never watched a Kayla Harrison fight before this card. I went back to rewatch some of her fights against Aspen Ladd and stuff, and she's very slow on the feet. Obviously, her game is judo, is to take down Holly Holm, control her, land ground and pound shots. And I'm gonna pick her. I'm gonna pick her to win this fight, but I will not be surprised if Holly Holm is able to win this fight by a decision. She's obviously the better striker here, but she is a lot older in her career. But I'm gonna go with Kayla Harrison, but I feel like she's too big of a favorite in my opinion. Like, if I was a betting man, I wouldn't really bet on Kayla Harrison. Now, moving on to Calvin Kattar versus Aljamain Sterling. I'm going to go with the underdog here as well. I'm going to go with Calvin Kattar. Look, a lot of people are picking Aljamain Sterling by decision. And yes, obviously Aljamain Sterling could look to take down Calvin Kattar, but Aljamain Sterling's takedowns are very overrated. Yes, once he takes her back, he's pretty good at controlling you. You know, maybe latching up a submission, getting your neck and stuff like that. But I mean, he hasn't gotten a submission since Corey Sandhagen. Well, when I think about this fight on the feet, yes, Aljo is a very funky striker, but he literally has no hands. He has no hands, and Calvin Kattar is going to be the taller fighter, which Aljamain typically relies on his size at 135 pounds. He's going to be the smaller fighter in there. Calvin Kattar is actually pretty good at using his reach and his length. He's the way better boxer, He's a way better boxer in here. And I just feel like Aljamain Sterling, if he doesn't have success with the takedowns, I really feel like he has nothing for Calvin Kattar on the feet besides just point fight and just fight from range. And I think Calvin Kattar is good enough on the feet to actually land on Aljamain Sterling. And I think he's the way better boxer. So I'm going to go with Calvin Kattar to win this fight by a decision. I would not even be surprised if Calvin Kattar is able to find a finish. I'm going to go Calvin Kattar with the underdog, guys. I'm going with a lot of underdogs on this card. And yeah, I did a lot of research. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm right. We'll see what ends up happening. Now, moving on to Jiri Prochazka versus Alexander Rakic. Man, this is a tough fight as well. This is a really tough fight because Alexander Rakic, you know, he's a pretty technical striker. He's a way better, I think he's a way better, like, skilled fighter than Jiri Prochazka, in my opinion. Like, I know Jiri Prochazka has a warrior spirit. You know, he has a lot of power. He's very unorthodox. But when I think of the technique and skills, I think Alexander Rakic is way better. Obviously, Alexander Rakic can take this fight down to the mat. You know, he could also leg kick Jiri Prochazka the way Alex Pereira did and have success there. However, Alexander Rakic has very low output on the feet. He doesn't like to be in a brawl, which is exactly what Jiri Prochazka wants and does in most of his fights. And I feel like the fact that Alexander Rakic is coming off an injury and hasn't fought in almost 2 years is making me pick Jiri Prochazka. I'm going to pick Jiri Prochazka just because I feel like he has a power advantage. The fact that he's been a little bit more active. I know that prior to Alex Pereira fight, he hadn't fought in over a year as well. But Alexander Rakic, his fights are pretty boring. His fights lately, I feel like he doesn't really want to be in a war or a brawl, which is exactly what Jiri Prochazka brings. So I'm going to go with Jiri Prochazka by a KO, but I could see Alexander Rakic winning by a decision if he's able to take down Jiri Prochazka and you know, control him on the ground and win there and pretty much put a stinkfest kind of performance. And if he's able to break down Jiri Prochazka with the leg kicks, I could also see him winning that way. But I just think Jiri Prochazka is going to be way too unorthodox. And I think he's going to be able to land the power shots to really hurt Alexander Rakic. And I also don't like the fact that Alexander Rakic just hasn't fought in quite a while. So I'm going to go with Jiri Prochazka to win this fight. So opening the main card, we have Bo Nickal versus Cody Brundage. Probably the worst fight on the card just because, you know, Bo Nickal is facing another can in the UFC. Instead of, you know, fighting somebody that's actually main card worthy, the UFC gave him Cody Brundage. And I really don't get the hype with Bo Nickal. Look, the guy hasn't fought in over 6 months. His last fight was at UFC 290. I believe it was UFC 290, Volkanovski versus Jair Rodriguez. And yeah, he was able to get an impressive win over Val Woodburn, but that fight was on short notice. And as we've learned, Val Woodburn isn't really anything special when it comes to MMA skills. And now he's facing Cody Brundage, who, you know, I know Cody Brundage is coming off that slam knockout over Reese at UFC Austin, but Cody Brundage is basically a can. And if the UFC really does believe that Bo Nickal is the real deal, you would think they would give him a better opponent at least. It doesn't have to be somebody that's ranked, but at least somebody that is actually a threat to Bo Nickal, because Cody Brundage is an absolute can. And honestly, all the pressure is on Bo Nickal to actually perform, because if he doesn't get Cody Brundage out of there in less than a round, he's gonna lose all his hype. So I feel like this is a lot of pressure on Bo Nickal. He hasn't fought in quite a while. I'm not too sure why. I'm not too sure if he was dealing with any injuries, but obviously the pick is gonna be Bo Nickal. Cody Brundage has that chance because it is MMA and anything could really happen. And maybe if you want to put a little bit of money on Cody Brundage because he's such a huge underdog, but obviously Bo Nickal's the pick. Obviously he's the better fighter, the better grappler, probably the guy with more power as well. But I mean, Cody Brundage, I mean, maybe he could make something happen, but I just really don't like this fight because it's not a very competitive fight. It's not a fight that, you know, people are going to go back and forth. Clearly, I mean, Bo Nickal is a huge favorite. So Bo Nickal is the pick for this fight. Either I could see him winning by submission most likely, or also a TKO. Now, moving on to Charles Oliveira versus Arman Tsarukyan, a fight that I've talked about a lot. I mean, I made 2 videos discussing how Charles Oliveira can win this fight. I made a separate prediction video saying that I think that Charles Oliveira is going to be able to beat Arman Tsarukyan. However, I am a big Arman Tsarukyan fan. I really am a big Arman Tsarukyan. I've been high on this guy for quite a while. I thought he was going to smoke Beneil Dariush. I picked him to smoke Beneil Dariush, and that's exactly what happened. Did I expect him to knock out Beneil Dariush in 1 round? No, I did not expect that, but I thought that he was going to be the faster guy on the feet, that he has a versatile leg kicking game, and that he's improving a lot, man. This guy is only 26 years old. He's already an amazing wrestler, and if he's able to improve his striking, he could be a very, you know, dangerous threat to the champ Islam Makhachev. And obviously Arman Tsarukyan right now has a lot of momentum. Like I said, he's coming off that win over Beneil Dariush. And I still think that if Arman Tsarukyan loses this fight, he's still the real deal, man. I mean, he's still very young. The thing is, the reason why I cannot pick Arman Tsarukyan, and it's not only because I'm a big Charles Oliveira fan, which I am, right? And there's been fights where I don't pick, you know, I don't pick Charles Oliveira. I actually did not pick Charles Oliveira to beat Dustin Poirier. And the reason why I'm picking Charles Oliveira is because I think he's the better striker. I think he's the guy capable. He has more power on the feet. I think he has more power. He's more versatile with his strikes. His left hook is pretty dangerous. His right hand is also pretty dangerous. He's fighting an orthodox fighter. Obviously, he also has the submission ability in his back pocket. The fact that he could submit Arman Tsarukyan. I just feel like Charles Oliveira has more ways to win this fight, but make no mistake, I definitely think Arman Tsarukyan has a path to victory here. I think that if he's able to control Charles Oliveira on the ground, because Arman Tsarukyan is one of the best wrestlers that Charles Oliveira has ever faced. If Arman Tsarukyan is able to control him in a dominant position, I think he'll have a lot of success and he'll have a lot of control time. And not only that, but Arman Tsarukyan actually has pretty nasty ground and pound. He lands pretty good elbows, like we saw in that fight against Alvarez. He lands pretty nasty ground and pound. So the way I see Arman Tsarukyan winning is with his grappling, or unless he also hurts Charles Oliveira on the feet and then he goes down to the mat to land ground and pound shots. But so Arman Tsarukyan is going to have to be careful in the way he goes to the ground, right? Because Charles Oliveira has a pretty nasty guillotine. He has pretty nasty submissions off his back as well. So I think Arman Tsarukyan does have a path here. I just think Charles Oliveira is a little bit too dangerous for him. He's never faced anyone like Charles Oliveira. He's never faced anyone with the pressure, with the dangerous threat of Charles Oliveira. However, obviously the blueprint is out there on how to beat Charles Oliveira. Now, the only thing that I don't like when people pick Arman Tsarukyan, because I think you could make a solid argument for picking Arman Tsarukyan. However, the thing that I've been seeing when people pick Arman Tsarukyan, I see them comparing him to Islam Makhachev, where the striking is nowhere near the same. Their grappling isn't nowhere near the same. Islam Makhachev actually gets submissions. Arman Tsarukyan has 0 submissions in the UFC. Maybe Arman Tsarukyan might be the better wrestler, but when it comes to the feet, I mean, he's not as defensively sound as Islam Makhachev. So I don't understand. I think just because both of them are grapplers, people tend to be like, okay, Arman Tsarukyan is the same as Islam Makhachev, when their game is nowhere near the same. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I don't like about the people that have been picking Arman Tsarukyan, that they compare him to Islam Makhachev. And maybe they're comparing him based on the fact that, you know, if Arman Tsarukyan hurts him on the feet, he's not going to be scared to go to the ground and land ground and pound shots, or, you know, get on top of him in a dominant position, while Justin Gaethje, you know, Dustin Poirier, some of those guys were a little bit more hesitant to go down to the ground with Charles Oliveira, who has a pretty nasty BJJ game. So I'm going with Charles Oliveira by a TKO by submission, but make no mistake, I won't be sleeping comfy. Like I definitely think Arman Tsarukyan has a path to win here. Now moving on to Justin Gaethje versus Max Holloway. Oh man, this fight is hard. This fight is really hard. And you know what? It's kind of funny because when this fight first got announced, actually before the fight got announced, I made a video saying that this was the fight to make for 2024. And I got a lot of backlash, man. A lot of you guys were saying, oh man, you want Max Holloway to get killed. Justin Gaethje is absolutely going to destroy him. This fight shouldn't happen. It's a disgrace. It's terrible matchmaking. The same people who were mad about this fight happening are the same people now picking Max Holloway. And I just find that very ironic, and I wanted to point it out because I always thought this fight was kind of close, and I always thought that Max Holloway actually had a chance. And now that Max Holloway is actually bulking up for the weight class, which means that he'll probably have a little bit more power in his shots, and we've seen Justin Gaethje get hurt in fights. Even though Justin Gaethje has shown that he's improving his game, he's a lot more patient, he's a lot more technical, he still has that power, he has a nasty leg kicking game, he's a lot more composed, which I like. I mean, his coach literally said, like, you're controlled chaos. Like, that's what he told him in the Dustin Poirier rematch, and I feel like that's a pretty good description of the current version of Justin Gaethje. And Max Holloway, he has taken a lot of damage in his career, man. I mean, I rewatched that fight against Volkanovski, the trilogy. He took a lot of damage over 5 rounds. And I think if Volkanovski is able to do that to you, I know Volkanovski is a little bit more, is more skilled than Justin Gaethje, but Justin Gaethje has the power, and power can change things real quickly. You know what I'm saying? So I'm going with Justin Gaethje. Now, Max Holloway has a chance. I saw the countdown and he was practicing knees, which I think is very smart, man, because Justin Gaethje, he likes to grunt, and he always ducks his head. And I think Max Holloway could capitalize with a knee. I think the way Max Holloway wins this fight is that he needs to land something big in the first couple of rounds to earn the respect of Justin Gaethje. Because if Max Holloway is landing a lot of shots on Justin Gaethje, but they're not really hurting Justin Gaethje, I think it's just going to be a very difficult time for Max Holloway to actually win the fight. So I think Max Holloway is going to have to land something early that really hurts Justin Gaethje for him to have success in the fight. And with Justin Gaethje, I don't see Justin Gaethje just knocking out Max Holloway with one punch or one head kick. Like, I don't think that's the way he wins. I think he wins with just cumulative damage over 5 rounds. Maybe he gets a doctor stoppage. So ultimately, I'm going with Justin Gaethje by decision. Look, I know Max Holloway is very hungry. I know he's bulking up, but I just think that Justin Gaethje is a lot more composed. He's not a brawler like he used to be. And I feel like Max Holloway doesn't have that crazy pressure style that he used to. Like, if you go back and rewatch that fight against Arnold Allen, he's a little bit more composed, and he is open to getting leg kicked. And if you're getting leg kicked by Justin Gaethje, like, he's going to start to break you down. So I'm going to go with Justin Gaethje by a decision. Look, Max Holloway, obviously he can pull the upset, and I'm glad that more people are actually giving Max Holloway his credit, because, like I said, when I made a video last year saying that this fight should happen, a lot of you guys were saying, Max Holloway, you want Max Holloway to die, blah, 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 blah. Now everybody's picking Max Holloway, so I kind of like that, but I still have to go with Justin Gaethje. I think he's getting a lot better. I think he's improving. He's a lot more composed, and I just feel like he has a style to really disrupt Max Holloway when he starts landing combinations and volume. So yeah, I'm going with Justin Gaethje. Now moving on to the co-main event, we got Yang Weili versus Yang Yaonan. And I feel like you know, Yang Weili, obviously the more complete fighter, very well-rounded, is coming off that win over Amanda Lemos, which is a pretty easy win. Obviously, she has amazing grappling, amazing striking, very physically imposing. Zhang Jianan is more of a striker. And obviously, a lot of us are going to pick Yang Weili because she's the more well-rounded fighter. She's the more tested fighter. Zhang Jianan had problems against Carla Esparza. She lost against Carla Esparza. She's been in a lot of like majority and split decisions, which is not a good sign. I know she's coming off a win over Andrade, but I mean, that was an Andrade that was coming off a loss against Erin Blanchfield like a month and a half prior. So I don't really take too much away from that win. I feel like Zhang Jianan doesn't really have like the wins on her resume for me to pick her to beat Yang Weili. However, I think if they're striking at range, I could see Yang Jianan winning. Like, I think she does have a puncher's chance. However, I think Yang Weili could submit her. She could win by ground and pound, KO, TKO, or she could also win a decision. So I have to go with Yang Weili here. The only way Yang Jianan wins, in my opinion, is by a knockout, kind of a fluky knockout or something like that, where Yang Weili, she gets a little bit too confident on the feet and Yang Jianan is able to capitalize because she's kind of a, I mean, she's only 1 inch taller than Yang Weili. I thought she was a little bit taller, but she's definitely longer. She has, oh no, they have the same reach. So yeah, I have to go with Yang Weili here. I mean, Yang Jianan definitely has the ability to make something happen on the feet. Maybe her takedown defense is better than we're expecting. Maybe this time off because she hasn't fought in like 10 months. So maybe she's improved her grappling, especially now that she's training with Uriah Faber. Maybe she's improved her grappling and takedown defense. But I still have to go with Yang Weili to win this fight. I don't see her winning by KO, maybe by submission, but I think this fight is going to go to a decision. So give me Yang Weili by a decision. Now, moving on to the main event, Alex Pereira versus Jamal Hill. I'm going to go with Hill, guys. I'm going with Jamal Hill. I know that not a lot of people are picking him, which I understand why. Look, there's a lot of circumstances going against Jamal Hill. He's coming off an Achilles injury. It seems like he was kind of rushed into this fight. He does have a lot of holes with his striking defense. He's never fought a striker like Alex Pereira. He doesn't have the names on his resume like Alex Pereira. Like Alex Pereira has a bunch of former champions on his resume. Jamal Hill has Thiago Santos, Jimmy Crute, Johnny Walker, and I guess his best win is Glover Teixeira. You know what I'm saying? So Alex Pereira is definitely the more experienced guy here. But, you know, I go back and I rewatch that Yuri Prochazka fight and that fight against Jan Blachowicz, and I just feel like Alex Pereira is slow. He has slow reaction time. I don't feel like he has the striking versatility and flexibility that he had at 185. And I just feel like the moment that Jamal Hill lands something clean, like if he doesn't get knocked out before that, I just think Jamal Hill could knock him out. I really do believe so. And I know that Jamal Hill, you know, a lot of people are saying, oh, well, he didn't knock out Glover Teixeira. Yeah, but he put a striking clinic on Glover Teixeira, a fight where the majority of you were picking against Hill. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I get it. He didn't knock out Glover Teixeira, but Glover Teixeira is a tough dude, man. And I feel like if Jamal Hill lands those same type of strikes on Alex Pereira, it's 9-9. You know what I'm saying? But I completely understand why people are picking Pereira. He should be the favorite. I mean, he has more momentum. He's been in there with more technical strikers, but I do feel like Jamal Hill is fast enough. He's athletic enough to make something happen on the feet. So I'm going to go with Jamal Hill by a knockout. I could see it in the second round or the first round. I think it's going to be early. And yeah, I mean, obviously Alex Pereira could win as well, right? He does have a nasty left hook. He could counter Jamal Hill with a left hook. He could also start to break down Jamal Hill with the leg kicks, but I just feel like Jamal Hill is a little bit too salty to get knocked out. He's a little bit too salty to get knocked out, and I trust his chin. He's never been hurt or dropped. Obviously, he's never faced anyone like Alex Pereira. I completely understand, but I still have that feeling that Hill's going to be able to knock out Pereira. So I'm going to stick with my gut feeling, with my initial pick, that Jamal Hill will win this fight by a knockout. I really do believe that's going to happen. So yeah, guys, that is my prediction for the main event. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you agree or disagree. Please make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.